All right. I think we are officially ready to launch our Forefront Forum for the month, talking about the Peer Skillshare program. Again, thanks everybody for joining us, especially our speakers. So we have today folks that have been both requesters and advisors in the Peer Skillshare program. I am Susie Lee. I'm the Director of Nonprofit Strategy and Engagement, and I'm going to be working really closely to help support folks connecting to this great resource. And I'd like to introduce my colleague, Emily Long, and actually let her introduce herself.
Take it away. Hi, I'm Emily Long. I know a lot of these names are very familiar. I help run, I'm the manager of education, but I also help run the Peer Skillshare program. So if you have questions or if you need anything about Peer Skillshare, if you get matched, you'll get emails from me.
All right, awesome. So our Forefront Forum program is one of the programs that came about out of the pandemic, when we realized that the opportunity for folks to connect and have conversations the way we used to at luncheons and conferences and just events that we would be out and about don't really exist anymore. So we wanted to create a space for those conversations, both to share information, but again, also to let folks talk to each other. So that's what the Forefront Forum is generally. Today's topic, again, is Peer Skillshare, and I would like to go ahead and let our presenters introduce themselves. I will also, actually, before I do that, say our sort of format for today is pretty casual, but we're going to start with some questions that we came up with together to really hit some big, important ideas. And then we'd really invite folks to open it up to share your experiences, your questions, as well. So please feel free, especially at the beginning, to share those in the chat anytime you like. So, Robert, could you start us off and share, name, organization, maybe how long you've been involved with Peer Skillshare, and let's leave it at that for the moment.
Sure. My name is Robert Simpson. I'm the Director of Operations at Facing Forward to End Homelessness, a permanent supportive housing provider in Chicago. And I have been an advisor for about 4 years, maybe. Before that, I also was a requester. I don't even know what the formal term is. But yes.
Perfect. And let's just pass that right over to Catherine.
Hello, I'm Catherine Corey, the Director of Development and Marketing at Bright Promises Foundation. We are a public foundation serving low-income and at-risk youth and across Chicagoland. And I have been a part of the Peer Skillshare community for many years, like Robert, also as a requester and as an advisor. Yeah, very excited to be here. Thank you.
Maggie, do you want to jump in next?
Maggie Dodge. I'm the Corporate and Foundation Relations Manager at Mercy Housing Lakefront. We're a nonprofit that provides affordable housing with on-site services in Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin. And I have been an advisor with Peer Skillshare, I think, for about 3 or 4 years. Not sure exactly when I started.
I think I'm the last one. So my name is Jess Larson. I'm with Girls in the Game. We provide sports health and leadership programming to girls in Chicago. And I have been only a requester at this point, but have been doing that for about 3 years now.
Awesome. Thanks, Jess. And we also have Julie. Oh, I think, Julie, you're still on mute.
Of course. Of course I was. I'm Juliet Scott. I'm founder of Two Brighter Days. We focus on youth, family, health and wellness, as well as economic development. And I've been with Forefront for 4 years now, mostly as a role of a requester, and I have got a chance to participate as an advisor once. So I enjoy being a part of this community.
There we go. Again, it's been a year and we're still doing it. Could you share a little bit, since you've been working with Peer Skillshare the longest at Forefront, sort of what folks should know getting started, what's new about the new released version. What should we start with?
Are you talking to me, Suze?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so. You were cut off. Yes. So yeah, we've Pierce Skillshare started with the Pierce Family Foundation. They started the program, and then it moved over to us in 2016. And before it was only open to grantees of the funders for the program, but now that's changed. The program is now open to forefront members only, some of whom were participating before, because now they're also forefront members, but it's now a member benefit. So it essentially works the same. You know, we've set out a call for advisors a couple weeks ago. And we've got a nice little pool, but we're always looking for more, of course. And you can be an advisor, you can be a requester, you can do both. A lot of folks like Julie and Jess who do both. Yeah, so we just launched it a few weeks ago. We've gotten a good response, but we're always open to more advisors, always open to more requesters. And I think I'm missing something, but that's what's in my head right now.
Sorry. We're going to keep talking about it.
Yeah.
So to get to know the rest of the folks in the room, I'm going to open a poll real quick. And just to sort of check out who's here and what you're looking for so we can tailor our comments just a little bit. Everyone, hopefully, yep, okay, I'm getting some responses, so people are seeing it, that's good. So I'll leave that open for about 30 seconds and then give our panelists a heads up that once we get those results in, I'd love to start with a highlight of, you know, something that if somebody said to you, why would I be interested in Peer Skillshare? What would be the first thing that comes to your mind? And I'll leave this open. Almost everybody's completed the poll. I'll give you like 10 more seconds if you're feeling really excited about it. Don't feel like answering it, that's fine too. All right, it looks like, oh, I'm so excited already. The vast majority of folks want to be both requesters and advisors, which is exactly what we want to hear. All right, so are folks seeing the results there? Very cool. So somewhat unsurprisingly, most of the folks on here have not yet participated in Peer Skillshare. That's sort of what we anticipated and hoped, because that's the idea to share. But yeah, like I said, very, very excited folks are interested in both sharing and requesting. We'll dig in a little bit later into sort of what it takes to be an advisor. But for now, let's start with those highlights. Anybody of our panelists excited to share?
Oh, pick me, I'm excited.
Yes, thank you, Julie.
So, you know, I'm really happy to have this opportunity because I was thinking about it before we jumped on. And the beautiful thing about Peer Skillshare is community. A lot of times in the beginning, I used to try to struggle through things by myself. And Peer Skillshare gives you that phone a friend opportunity. And it's phone a friend, but it's connect with a friend online. And then you get a chance to phone a friend during your appointment. But that's so valuable because as you start to build, you do run into stuff. And it's like, and the first inclination, interestingly enough, is kind of to struggle through it on your own. But that doesn't get you as far along as you can if you just reach out for help. You'd be surprised at the resources out there. And so I love this community. I love learning how to phone a friend because that was a lesson I had to learn myself. And I just encourage other people, just if you get stuck, even in a hot second, just to reach out and find out what support, because the further and faster you move along, the more you can get done in the interest of your global work. That's all I got.
I'm going to hop in and piggyback off Juliet. I agree, especially about the phone a friend. I think one of the biggest things is like we're all familiar with Google searches. However, they're not the most specific all the time, depending on what the need is. And so what you end up doing is an hour of Google searching, right? Like, okay, I'm gonna try these set of keywords together. And, oh, that didn't work. Okay, I'm gonna try this set of keywords while you're trying to drill down to fit your specific needs versus scheduling for an hour with someone that has done what you've done successfully, potentially in the same field or similar field as what you're doing it in. And as an advisor on the other end, what happens is now you're talking about your processes and they're talking about their processes and maybe an issue they had, and maybe you haven't had it, but you're like, oh my God, that could be an issue I'm gonna have. Now you can start developing as an advisor, kind of like in advance of potential issues or problems, or even say something that you thought you could resolve well, but now you've got somebody else that brought up things that you might not have considered. So I've benefited almost as much as an advisor as I have as a requester, because it allows me to review and think about what I'm doing.
Yeah, I'd love to just echo what Roberette shared, that having been both an advisor and a requester, the experience and the learning is rich on both sides of the exchange. And it's definitely one of those rare networking opportunities where it's a little bit networking, it's a little bit mentorship. And it's one of those great mentorships where things go both ways. So it's not a one-sided exchange. It's something that really is a mutual benefit. And one of my favorite things about peer skill in particular is that you come to the table with that one sticking point, that one hot spot, like Juliet said. And what I found is so often the conversation grows from there, and all of a sudden you're covering new topics, and you realize that you uncover that there's this other area of knowledge to be able to share and exchange. And what often is scheduled for a 1-hour conversation turns into much more than that, as these really wonderful opportunities to connect over other topics. So you sit down at the table trying to cover one thing, and not only do you get that knowledge and that information shared, but very often other issues that you've been encountering are also addressed during that skill share. And that is a really sort of bang for your buck in terms of how am I going to spend my time. It's an incredible resource in that way.
Yeah, I think the networking is wonderful. I mean, who's really good at actual networking when you walk into a room of people and try and make connections? And this is a really focused way to actually connect with someone in your industry, talk through a specific issue, and come out on the other side with not just some ideas, but also a networking relationship that you can go back to and is stronger than just passing out 100 business cards in a room of people. So I really enjoyed that part. I also really like kind of workshopping an idea before I try it. So if we have a new idea or a new event or something that we've come up with in our development department or what have you, I will often do a peer skill share with someone to get an outside perspective with someone who's done that before, to figure out where they've run into problems and to kind of preempt anything that might come up as we explore this new idea or new effort that we're doing.
Yeah, I agree with everything all of you said. I think, I don't know, I think exactly, it's a much more organic way to network than a traditional networking meeting. I think also, as an advisor, it's a great opportunity if you have something that you've figured out or that you've kind of struggled through on your own, and you're like, I know other people are probably dealing with this or trying to figure this out. It's a great way that you can actually share some work you've done and kind of pull impact and work with others to tackle problems that are so common. So it's a great program.
And I remember some of you talking about how you can, Jess, you mentioned this too, before you're starting a project, Roberette, I think you phrased it as a pre-consultant consultation. Am I remembering that phrase correctly? Could you talk a little bit more about that, of how you've used Peer Skillshare to help you kind of think through process?
So yeah, I call pre-consulting review. term for it. And so we've worked with consultants in a bunch of different ways. And we find that when you have an opportunity to speak with someone that's either going through a process with a consultant in a similar fashion or have completed a process, that we're able to then focus our funds, right? Because it costs money to have a consultant. And so we're able to focus our funds more strategically when we already kind of have had some do's and don'ts and not to consider, or even what we've done once is we've actually changed in mid-consultant process, to be honest with you, because we got some information from another provider that we were like, oh my God, we did not even consider this. We need to figure out a way to add this component to it. And so I find that, especially if you're looking at, when you're hiring a consultant, it's because typically there's some type of big area that you just have no experience or skills in, but you're going in blind. That's why you're getting a consultant. And so having that conversation beforehand sometimes gives you some foundational format, again, from similar type of organizations or someone that's gone through that process that can help target those conversations.
Yeah, I would say for me, we're a pretty small department of development staff, 4 of us. And so we were thinking through some new strategies for mail appeals, which is really hard to do because you really just have to do it and see if it works. And if it doesn't, then you've wasted all that money. And so that is one area where I definitely went to peer Skillshare and talk through the different ideas that I had to bring in thousands of dollars through our amazing new mail appeal and get some like good feedback before actually having to send it out into the world. I've also done that for auxiliary board areas. I manage our auxiliary board, and there's been, just normal board struggles. So I came up with like a list of ideas of things that I could do. And it was really good to sit down with someone and go through that list and kind of see what's a bit more surface problems, what are actually some good ideas within this list before you try 1,000 new things.
I would add also, so I'm operations and HR, but it's just me. Like Jess said, I don't even have a team. I'm the team. And so being able to, so now I have, since I've done so many years of this, I now have a group of people and we email chat. And it's like, now I have a team of 5, although I'm the only paid person and they don't realize it. So they're my other unpaid staff. And they help me, work through my policies, like, hey, this is my policy. And they look at it, and it's a great way to continue that process on. So now I have a kind of group that I respect, I trust. We share confidential information, and we all kind of support each other because we're all the same size organizations where we're the only HR component. And I was able to develop that through my peer Skillshare.
I think that was something in our prep conversation I was so excited about, of, growing the brain trust so that you can feel like you've got other folks you can turn to. There's another question that we sort of chatted about, and I know has already come up a little bit as people have been signing up. We have so many different categories that you can sign up for. It can be really tempting to check all of the boxes. I want help on this and this and this. But from your all's experience, both as requesters and advisors, what would you say, like, how would you right size a request to get started?
I'm a strong believer that the more focused the request that you come in with, the more likely you are to walk away with a real usable deliverable. If you come in with too broad of a request, you can sort of spend a lot of that valuable time together trying to hone in on what it is that you're really looking for help with. And it can be tempting sometimes, I think, because especially I too am in a micro shop. I am a development team of 1. So it can be really tempting to try to use that opportunity when you're finally sitting down with somebody who knows what you're experiencing and knows what has been through it, to kind of use that as a bit of a nonprofit therapy session, which is great and valuable and a wonderful opportunity to connect. But in reality, what the goal of these peer Skillshares is to be able to walk away with something you can use. So I think if you can really sort of try to hone in on what exactly it is that you are hoping to walk away with, as I mentioned before, the conversation is going to grow and evolve. It's going to go into different places. You're going to cover more ground than what you sat down initially to discuss. And if that doesn't happen, then you still at least have a really clear deliverable in mind, and you can walk away from the meeting and say, yes, I know my action items. I know my next steps. I know what to do. So specificity, I think, is key, knowing that it's going to grow from there.
Yeah, I'd
I
like
would
to add
add,
I'm sorry, if I could just add a
no,
thing. If anyone is interested in requests, I would recommend just looking at the request form, digging around in there, reading our instructions. We do recommend you get really specific on what you want. And there's also a comment box. If you can't figure out your exact skill that you need help with, you can write a little paragraph and let us know. Because the more detailed and the more specific you get, the easier it's going to get. It's easier for us to match you and find the right advisor. Same with being an advisor. You can also, I would recommend just going and looking at the advisor form, peeking, digging around. You don't have to submit it yet, but really think about what you can help with. We're not asking for 10 different categories from you. If there's one really good thing one thing that you're really good with, that's enough. There's some folks, we have some great advisors who can help with lots of things, but we also have some advisors who can help with one thing that they're an expert on, and that's great. I'm also going to put into the chat a link to our skill tree list. We have maybe 12 categories of skills, and under that are bazillion categories, and under that are a gazillion skills. So it's hard when you're in the form to get an idea of what your options are. So I'm going to put that. This is just a document, a flat document that can show you every skill that you have to choose from. And if you have a skill that's not on the list, you can always email me and we can add it.
that's what I was going to say, is that the benefit of this to me is that it's part of your membership also with Forefront. And so utilize Forefront. Emily is very responsive, and the staff there I found have been very, very helpful. So if you need clarity, I find sometimes just asking for that support, because there's been times that she's like, can you do this? And I'm like, let's talk about that, because I don't know, and let's see exactly if I can figure out what their need, and then I can answer that question, if that makes sense. I would also say it's a long-term relationship. It's rare that my skill shares, some have, it's like a one and done, but usually it's, something we reach out to each other in different fashions over time. And so you might want to consider, like if it's in program as an example, what are the specific areas in program that might trickle into the other areas, so to speak. And so if you start out maybe in a more specific fashion, like everybody's saying, what you'll find is that there's a pattern toward, that ultimate goal of all the other tasks that might be connected to that.
I'd like to add something small to it. Sometimes when you first get into a resource community and you are handling so many things, it's like, okay, I have this great resource, everything is here. Now, where do I start? And for me, it was important to try to figure out what's the priority. And then you identify the source, the particular thing in relation to that priority. And then you can kind of drill down where you need to be, because you might need, if you're hungry, you might need a whole plate with proteins and starches and vegetables. But what is your body's priority at the moment? And if you're feeling a little weak, you might want to start with the protein. And I would suggest the same approach.
Yeah, and I was just going to mention too, I think usually when you do a request and get matched with an advisor, I found it's really helpful to communicate a little bit by email first before the meeting and kind of like drill down exactly what it is that you want to get out of it. So if you do have like a bigger idea you're thinking about, I feel like that email exchange can be really helpful to figure out what can actually happen in this first session.
Yeah, I'd second that. That conversation is really important, that after the match conversation, because there have been times that I've talked with my advisor and we've discovered that we're not really a good fit for the issue that we're having. And rather than like spending a whole hour figuring that out, we were able to figure that out in an email or two and go back to the drawing board, and totally fine. It also helps, if you're any materials you need to prep, any questions you need to think through ahead of the conversation so that you guys can be ready to just kind of jump in and dig into the problem. So that conversation is really important, like you said, Maggie.
Another idea I remember being excited about was sort of talking about more of the brainstorming versus concrete steps. Maggie, I think you had an interesting frame for that. Could you dig in a little bit more?
Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember. Do you mean just now or when we do I remember what I talked about last week? I think that's something I had talked a little bit about. I don't know if this is what you were intending, but is that when you're thinking about or like looking at making a request, or when you're like emailing with an advisor beforehand, kind of thinking about like, if it's something that you've done some work on before, or you've done some Google searching and it's just like it's not really connecting, or you're finding a lot of conflicting information, or like different resources that don't quite feel like you're looking for. I feel like that is a great time to go to peer Skillshare and like work together to come up with like, this is like, I think something that I've done in some of my previous sessions. I had done some advising on Salesforce because that's a program I worked on before at a previous job. And it's actually really, nonprofits use it, but it's not really intended for nonprofits specifically. So I think that it's a system where it actually can be kind of hard to find good resources. So that I think was something that I felt like I could, if someone just needed help with Salesforce, I can let them know, like, these are the 3 resources that have really worked for me. I feel like this is maybe not as related to brainstorming. Just someone else want to jump in?
I mean, I would follow up with kind of what I said earlier with when we're workshopping a new idea. That's really a time when I can use not just brainstorming within my team at work, but some outside ideas who can take a look at it from outside the girls in the game perspective and see if we're like on the right path, or if we're like wildly off in the weeds, or if we need to tweak some things. And I find that peer Skillshares are really a good place to have those kind of big picture brainstorming conversations, so I can walk back in more focused, more confident in what we've talked about with our plan moving forward. And again, having that outside perspective is really valuable. It gets you outside of, your little circle of peers or colleagues that have all been talking through the same problems 1,000 times, and gets you a fresh view.
I would also add that from an advisor standpoint, those kinds of brainstorming conversations can be really rewarding, really rich. That's a great place where, I think Robert mentioned that it can be kind of intimidating to be an advisor because you feel like maybe you don't know everything about everything. And so it's that fear of like, oh, what if somebody asks me a question I don't know the answer to? And that's one of the really wonderful parts about that, more of those brainstorming types of skill shares, is that you come with your experience, you come with your knowledge, you come with what your gut tells you. And it's an opportunity to be that sounding board, to be that thought partner with someone. And so you don't have to know everything about everything. You just need to be there together and willing to sort of dig deeply into that brainstorming experience. And being in a small shop, I find that's especially valuable because you don't always have that person within your organization who can take part in that brainstorming process with you. And so that's been a really great resource for me, again, both as a requester and as an advisor. It is you don't have to know everything, and you can also like expand your team, which is a really great, get that unpaid staff in there.
Yeah, and I want folks to know that if you're an advisor and you submit a request, give us as much detail as possible. We're not going to match you up with someone who needs help with a skill that you don't have. We're going to match you with people who need your skills specifically. So don't be afraid of like you're going to get some wacky request that you can't help with, but we try to match up folks really well. And sometimes it still doesn't work out because there's maybe one aspect that some people need help with that the other person can't, even though they're pretty good with the topic. But in general, we're going to match you up with folks who we're pretty sure you can help.
I'd also say as a requester, kind of be open to that conversation. If you walk into a conversation and you think, I'm going to get X, Y, and Z out of this conversation, you're probably not. And you're probably going to be frustrated. But if you walk into a conversation like, I need someone to just like talk through this idea with me or talk through this problem with me, you may come away with steps that you never even thought about coming away with. So I think that's a mindset to come into the conversation with as a requester. That's really important.
And I would add, if it's a technical component, I'll give an example that I've experienced, like someone wanted some data migration and data analysis assistance using Excel. And then in the conversation, I realized that they needed to learn how to use Excel. And that's not an hour-long conversation, but I was able to give some very specific resources and trainings that were free that I had used to learn how to use Excel that went from beginning to advanced. And I was like, how about, when you're done with these, let's talk in a couple months. Then we could talk about that component of, data migration and analysis once you actually can use the system. But me spending an hour to try to teach you how to use Excel is not a good use of my time or your time even, because I'm a horrible trainer and she would have learned that the hard way.
Yeah, and the program is designed for a one-time get together, one-time meeting. This isn't a long-term mentoring. I mean, some people stay in touch and that's awesome. But the advisors have full-time jobs and we don't want to burden them too much with a 6-hour session when they don't have time for that. So it's a one-time session, 1 to 2 hours. Sometimes it goes beyond that. If it's a quick skill, maybe it's less than that. But we are cognizant of advisors' lives and jobs, and so if you're a requester, just take that into an account. This isn't a free for all. It's you've got one skill, and hopefully within that time frame we can take care of it.
So then for those of you that have been advisors, what would you share? Because I know we've gotten some folks, we love our consultant members and are delighted to have them participate. But for folks that they don't have the title of consultant, they don't have maybe a specific certification, what would you tell someone who is trying to decide whether or not they're a good fit as an advisor?
I'll start. I would say that like the very first time I was an advisor, I think I was way more nervous than the requester, just because I was like, I hope I don't mess this up for them. That's what I was thinking. And as I talked, I was like, oh, I do this. I've been doing this for years. This is super easy. And part of that too is, the unknown. I didn't know them, they didn't know me. But I would say if you've got, some years of experience doing something, if you're advanced in Excel, for instance, and you're able to do, flowchart spreadsheets, et cetera, then you probably can give someone some direction or something like that. If you've been, and it's not so much like your education, I think it's more like your integration of a process. So it's not so much like I've got my master's in HR, and so I'm going to be an advisor, because if you haven't actually done HR work or diversity work, it might be difficult to explain how to integrate that process within a workplace. But if you have, I would say like at least, 3 to 5 years of experience in a specific skill set, then you probably could advise somebody else on how to integrate that within their environment also. And you have to be comfortable talking and sharing, I would say. If you're not that comfortable talking, that might be difficult, because you're going to spend a lot of time talking.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like that, I completely agree with that. I feel like some practical experience in a specific area. And I would say, I guess also, like, I think it can just be if there's something that you have had to figure out how to do in the past that you think other people might be trying to figure out too? I think when I first started at my current job, we were trying to figure out how to track all of our grants managed in Razor's Edge. And Razor's Edge is like not really meant for grants tracking specifically. And like when I was working on it, I was like, you know, seems like lots of other people also do not know how to do this. And like I spent some time working on it and came up with a system that worked for our organization. And then I was like thinking that maybe this was something that I could share what had worked for me, because maybe other people might be able to do something similar too. So I feel like it doesn't, like, it can be something that you have a lot of experience in and are really an expert, or you can just want to share what worked for you personally and see if it might work for other people too.
I would just add that being an advisor is a great way to combat imposter syndrome too. You know, obviously we all have more to learn. Obviously, we all want to continue to grow, but being an advisor can be a wonderful way to share and learn as well. And I think often when you find you sit down at the table, you have a lot more expertise than sometimes we give ourselves credit for. And so I think, yeah, it's that combination of some practical experience. And I always recommend too, it's the thing that you get excited about. You know, I think in the pre-call, I think I called it the thing that you kind of geek out about. So if it's this like way that you found a workaround in Razor's Edge, and it gives you energy because you're like, yes, I figured this out. I want to pay it forward. And that's really the best thing that you can bring to the table as an advisor, is that enthusiasm for the problem solving, much more than some sort of extensive expertise or credentialing or anything in the particular topic area.
I'd like to add that two things that already came up is clarifying early on about that skill. So from the advisor viewpoint, even when you sign up to be an advisor, that area that you know and know well, sign up for that area first, because that area is the one where you're going to have the most impact. So you might have experience and expertise in multiple areas, but when you get into the advisory role, you might run into having an experience with the requester that what they were looking for, even though you've been doing that thing for years, is not what you were able to provide. And because this community is so big and so beautiful, somebody else might have really been a better fit for them. So just be clear about that thing that like you are super amazing on, that really you geek out about, like that's your area. Start there and let the other people who have that experience with those other areas, even though you might have some experience or even a lot of experience, but that's their thing, be that go-to person. And I think that's a great way for us to be a better community of advisors, and knowing that there is another advisor in our community that can really assist with that person, because you don't want to get into a consultation or a meeting with your participant or your requester, and you want to be of service, but you find out that particular thing is, yeah, I've been doing this for years, but that right there that they're looking for, that's not what they want out of this, and that's not what I can give. So know that this community is amazing, and somebody else might be a better fit for a particular thing, and just focus on your geeky thing, like that thing that you're super amazing in.
We do have one question from Dorothy about limits on how many requests can come in per org throughout the year. And we've talked about this. We don't have a limit right now. We're just starting out, so I would suggest, going with your top most important things, because our advisor pool is growing, but it's still on the smaller side. So we do request that people submit one request at a time. In the past, I think we allowed people to do 2 at a time, but that's, again, with our advisor pool, I think 1 at a time is great. But of course, everyone in your org is eligible for this member benefit. So if we get a lot from one org, it might be hard to keep up with, but currently there's no limit. And as we increase in the number of advisors, we'll get, our capacity will grow and stuff. But
And I actually have a quick follow-up question.
Sure.
From like the first contact to actually having the first meeting, I know you suggested having perhaps a few emails in between. How long is like the time frame?
It really depends. Some people are on the ball and they'll meet within the next couple of days after getting. So when you submit a request and you're matched, you'll get an email from me telling you who your advisor is if you're the requester, and what the topic is. And then I CC the advisor. And then the instruction, there's a pretty clear set of instructions. Like, here's the next step. The requester should reach out to the advisor. Sometimes the advisor gets on it quicker, and that's fine too. And then the two of you will set up, either exchange emails or set up a time to talk on the phone. Back in the olden days, people would meet together in a room at the same time, especially if they're in Chicago. That's another great thing about this, is that we can match you up with folks from all over the state, which is fantastic. But it really depends. I mean, if people are on the ball and their schedules are open, it'll happen within a couple of days. Sometimes people will say, I'm going on vacation, or who goes on vacation anymore? I don't know. Or I'm busy the next week. Can we do it at the end of the month? And there's really no limit. I mean, if you're a requester and you need help right away, if there's some kind of urgent deadline, talk to your advisor about it. But it really depends on the schedules and how flexible people are and how soon they need help. So there's no really set time frame.
Dorothy, in most of my experiences, it's usually about a 2-week engagement between the point where you're matched, the back and forth pre-emails, which cover both the scheduling as well as that sort of getting on the same page, that alignment fit, and that also that, understanding what the goals of it. And then the meeting, which usually happens, and then usually a little bit of like follow-up, or, hey, here's a resource that I updated based on our conversation. Can I get some additional feedback? So in most of my experiences on both sides of the table, it's been about a 2-week relationship that hopefully grows into more, but that's what the typical turnaround has been.
And does it tend to be just the two people meeting each other, or Zooming with each other, or sometimes are there other people, like a board? Like, I was looking, board development is, for instance, one of the topics. Would you ever have like a board president join you for that conversation?
Yeah, that's fine. And sometimes we've had advisors. There was one in particular who said, I can work on this, but I have a coworker who's really good at it. So they would meet together with the requester. But yeah, you can bring another person in for sure. We discourage, like, I think at one point somebody wanted the advisor to talk to like their whole staff. And it was like, it's generally supposed to be a small one-on-one or two-on-one. But yeah, if there's somebody who you want to have sit in on the match, for sure.
I think my largest group was 4 people, and that's because they all had the same function, if that makes sense. And so it was like me supporting, and they asked different questions relative to their skill set. I think anything beyond that, like when Emily said, it starts feeling more like a training.
I've also found that some of the best skill shares that I've had have been one-on-one, though, because it creates a little bit more of opportunity to get vulnerable. Sometimes if you've got a board president or something there, you don't want to admit what you don't know. You want to obviously look like you're good at your job and you know what you're doing, even if you're seeking help. And so that one-on-one connection can be a really great opportunity to sort of lay it out and say, like, this is what I'm feeling insecure about. This is what I really don't know. This is what I tried and failed at. And failing forward can be a really great resource for Skillshare to say, like, we did this whole thing and this did not work. And an advisor can come in and really offer some insight about, like, this is what to try in the future. Like, this was the good elements that you should pull from your work and carry forward. I know I've had really rich conversations that were rooted in starting from a place of failure and how to get better.
We are closing in on the end of our time. I wanted to open it up and see if there was anybody else that had any questions that came to mind. If you wanted to put them in the chat, or feel free to take yourself off mute and speak it into the group.
have a quick question. Hello, everybody. Is in part of the signing up, is there like a confidentiality thing that we agree to and that the advisors agree to, that, or is it just an unsaid thing that we know we're not going to talk about stuff outside of that one-on-one?
I've done both. So it depends, to be honest with you. Some topics I've asked, and sometimes I've been asked as an advisor, and I have no issue with signing confidentiality. Some, once I give it very specific, they were working on some merger and acquisition questions. And so I already knew, once I knew what the topic was, that it was going to be a confidential conversation. But they actually had me sign something before I, even talked to them and get the emails about what the topic was. And so I've done both, if that makes sense.
And just building on that, Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, but we do not have any confidentiality agreement like that's part of the standard request.
We don't, no.
So optional add-on.
Yeah, for sure.
I've also had really great experiences where the kind of thing you think that people would want to keep close to the chest have actually been shared as really great tools. Like I've had experiences when I was a requester where someone was like, here's our entire detailed budget for our whole event. And this is exactly what we're allocating to what. And this is exactly what we're spending on consultants and exactly what we're spending on venues. And that can be really eye-opening because you don't always get a chance to look at those things. And similarly, as an advisor, I've sent raw graphic design materials and said, here, swap out your picture for our picture and feel free to use this. And so times when I thought people would not want to share resources, a little different from information, but it's times when I thought people would not be willing to share, they've been very generous. And I've been very happy to say like, oh yeah, we already did the work on that. Please take it, use it, and pay it forward.
Awesome. Emily Taylor has a question that I think is in your ballpark, so I'm going to let you take that one. The question for the group, if you're not seeing the chat, is, are there any differences between a consultant advisor and a nonprofit advisor?
I'm not quite sure what you mean. A consultant.
Sure.
Like,
I can elaborate. I wasn't quite sure how to phrase it, but
sure.
Just coming in as a consultant advisor versus someone who works at a nonprofit, and
Gotcha.
being more of a advisor and what did we start requester?
Yeah, I mean, not really. I mean, hopefully the requesters know that you are a consultant and you're doing it on your free time, and you're not gonna. This isn't a paid gig for you, so generally it should be treated the same way. And hopefully people won't take advantage of, like, this is all they do. Maybe they can help me next week too, and next month, and but it should generally work the same way. Hopefully, a one-time gig, just a couple hours to help you, and it, and if for some reason someone's like, can I get free help from you next week too? You'd have to handle that on, in your own way. But hopefully folks will realize that, this is a one-time meeting.
Well, and I think that really tees up kind of the concluding question that I have for our panelists. The thing that I get most excited about this is it so taps into why I became a nonprofit professional. I think why a lot of us did, we're here to make the community better in all the different ways that our different types of organizations and our different particular skill sets make our community a better place. So again, just sort of as our last round robin from our panelists, what would you say is sort of your big takeaway? Like, why did you sign up again? You've done this before and you took the time to say, yep, I'm gonna do it again. I'm not gonna quietly exit as this program changed a little bit.
For me, it's because as it relates to the world being a better place, there's a lot of work to be done. And as much as I can lend myself to that end, I'm willing to do it because that's what's important, is that we build a better world.
Beautifully said.
Yeah, I agree with what the sentiment Juliet just expressed, that, you know, this isn't easy work that any of us do. And too often we are in our silos or feel separate or feel overwhelmed and overworked. And peer Skillshare is a really great double bottom line, in that you get to connect with others who can help to sort of nourish your nonprofit soul and keep you motivated and keep you close to the work. And then also help you get a really valuable takeaway that when, you know, when your higher up say, how did you spend your time? You can say, I spent it well. I spent it well in helping me be a better nonprofit professional, and I spent it well in supporting our organization and helping us be more effective and efficient. And so I don't know of a lot of programs where you get that dual benefit. And I think that's something that's really wonderful and really special about Peer Skillshare.
Yeah, I
I
think
agree. Well, oh, go ahead.
sorry. I would say I think Peer Skillshare is a very unique opportunity that you can tackle some really tough problems and problems that you just like struggled with and tried to think through and approach from different angles, that you can't just like Google and find the solution to. Peer Skillshare has been that tool that I've used when I'm just really struggling with something big and difficult, and that is more than one dimension, that you really need someone who's been there before and who has that experience and that attitude to kind of help you see through to the other side.
I agree with everyone. I think as a requester, the biggest thing for me is, as it's not often that I get to drill down because I'm usually in my day to day. And these are really good opportunities for me to look at things I probably normally would not look at processes and thoughts or patterns that I've had that from a different perspective, and have a conversation about that. And so it's like a great way to get out of my day to day, and, you know, sit and problem solve with someone else, which sometimes leaves me more refreshed and looking at what I'm doing in a different manner. And so I used to take a coffee break before or after. It was like a half day for me. And it was a great opportunity for me to really think about the why, because most of us are doing different things for different whys. And so it made me think about the why of why I'm doing what I'm doing often. So that's why I really enjoy doing them.
As usual, guys, great responses. I agree with everything. And yeah, I think also I would just echo that it's a great opportunity to share what you know about, to learn what other people really have expertise in, and to kind of like build community. I think it's a wonderful way to connect with other people in the field, other organizations you might not originally have been familiar with or didn't know people at personally. And I think it's also, as an advisor, a great way to hone skills that you already have, and to, you know, if you do something, I feel like it's different than if you are like showing someone else what you do or teaching someone about something. So it's a great way to sharpen the skills you already have too.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for being here. I hope that you know, the folks that have not had a chance to participate in Peer Skillshare feel excited about doing so. We're really hope that you'll have a great experience and share the word with others. We're happy to open this up to the community and get lots of folks chatting with one another. So I hope today's information was helpful for everyone. And I also hope that this meeting helped you feel a little bit more connected and less alone. I feel like the pandemic's end is on the horizon, and I can't wait to get out of this little box. So hopefully we'll see you in person someday soon. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks to our panelists too.